Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be going through my Gameweek 12 watch list with some potential transfer targets. We'll do a bit of a battle stats comparison as we always do in this channel and compare to similarly priced players in the same positions and decide who you should be going for or if we should be trying to prioritize neither or both as well. Just a little quick update for you guys. I feel like this is a real community on this channel and I love chatting to you guys in the comments and stuff. So I just thought I'd let you know I am going through some really tough times in my personal life at the moment, and I'm just trying to keep afloat day by day. So I am going to still try and get the content out to give you guys something to watch and to distract me from the stuff going on. But the content might not be top quality as it always is. I'm trying my very best, and I might also not be able to reply to all of the comments as I usually do. So I'll still be looking at the comments. I'll try and reply to a few, but please do bear with me over the coming days, weeks, however long it takes to sort this out. But yeah, love you all very much. Thank you for continuing to watch the content. So without further ado, let's jump into today's video. Before we jump into today's video, I just want to give a shout out to the sponsors of this video and the videos on this channel in general, OneFootball. If you're not aware quite yet who OneFootball are, they're a brilliant football application that have every single thing you need for any competition, any match you want. They will have stats, live ticker, lineups as well. So over the international break, I really use this to keep up to date with what my players have been doing. Are they playing for their national team? If so, are they playing well? Any injuries, any updates through press conferences as well? They have little video clips as well. So basically, download OneFootball because it's completely free. It massively helps to support the channel and you get the best free football app on the market. If you do download OneFootball, you can either click the link in the description or you can scan the QR code, which you can see on the top left corner of the screen. Scan that on your phone. You can download the app. And if you do, let me know what you think of it. So I'm going to start with one which is not something I usually do, and this is comparing two completely differently priced players, but I think it is a big decision for a lot of us this week, because I think for a long time we've been planning to get Heung-min Son in, and we've definitely been targeting this as a time to potentially bring him in. From Game Week 12 onwards, we've known for a while, I've been talking about in pretty much every video on this channel, that Spurs fixtures become really good. Leeds, Burnley, Brentford, Norwich, Brighton, Leicester, all of those are pretty decent, especially the next four. And the only fixture there which looked quite tough was Brentford, but they seem to have really taken a turn recently for the worse. So I think all four of those fixtures are really nice to target. And I think Leeds and Norwich in particular for Son will be very good. Burnley and Brentford might be a little bit more Kane sort of game, but I just think in general at the moment, as we've discussed, Son's stats are better. Son looks like the player to own, which is annoying because I own Harry Kane. But for the time being, I think Son looks like the one. Anyway, so I think a lot of us have been targeting to bring in Son. But with the recent news that Firmino is injured, and I don't know the extent of his injury at this point. I haven't really been, because of the stuff going on, I haven't really been keeping up to date too much with that injury news. But as far as I heard last time, it was sort of 4 to 6 weeks, quite a serious hamstring injury was what Klopp said. So Diogo Jota looks like a player that could be nailed in the best attacking side in the Premier League for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we've said, as always, as we're going to discuss in the next bit, Jota's stats when he plays are remarkable. The issue is that he doesn't play every game. Now that he might be nailed, I think a lot of us are thinking, do we just continue with the original course of action, or do we now change that course of action and go for a different player? And there's a lot of psychology to this. There's planned continuation bias, as we've discussed before on the channel, which is where we lock ourselves into one player. And I've been locking myself in. I'm going to get Son. I'm going to get Son. I've left money in the bank to go from Havertz to Son as well. But I'm thinking maybe Jota is the guy to go for. He's so much cheaper, almost £3 million cheaper, and pretty good stats as well. So fixtures-wise, there is an obvious winner, at least over the short term, and that is Heung-min Son. And the fixtures are actually pretty decent till like Game Week 20, 22-ish for Spurs, so you don't even have to sell him in Game Week 16. The great thing about Son is that he allows a brilliant downgrade to either Sancho or Rashford or Greenwood. If any of those look particularly nailed in the upcoming, and if Manchester United improve as well, they could all be great options. And Son's a very nice, what we call a cash cow in FPL. So at his price, you can just downgrade him to any of those Manchester United players around Game Week 16 that have really good fixtures, or you could even move him to like a Phil Foden. Jota, if you're downgrading Jota and using the money elsewhere, you haven't got that cash cow in midfield because he's only 7.5 million. But as I said, fixtures upcoming for Son are better. Long term, they're pretty similar. I'd actually say that Liverpool's over the next like 15 are probably better. And as we know, and it's not discussed in these stats here, Liverpool's attacking stats are outrageous from a team perspective. Every single attacking underlying statistic, they come out on top. And Spurs are sort of mid-table for a lot of them. So we might see Conte getting a lot better out of Son and Kane. But for the time being, stats-wise, as a team, I would favour Liverpool. Short-term fixtures, I would favour Son. Long-term fixtures, I would favour Liverpool. What I'm going to say now, though, sort of means that fixtures don't really matter. And that is, Diogo Jota's underlying statistics, as they are in every single season, are unbelievable. And Son's just aren't. And it's really making me start to think that I might go for Jota over Son. Anyway, so the stats. 875 minutes for Son. He's played more minutes than Jota, but as always, we're looking at per 90 stats, which mitigates for that playing time differences. Projected points-wise, Jota is coming out slightly on top, even with the added minutes risk as well. And the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm takes into account expected minutes. Even with that, Jota is projected to get more points over the next 6 game weeks. Expected FPL points-wise, they're actually fairly similar. It's an extra point for Jota, which across the season does make up, but that's not that dramatic. What is the big difference for me here, and it's probably the number one stat that I always look at, is that expected goal involvement, and specifically non-penalty, which is basically non-penalty expected goals plus expected assists. And Jota's is unbelievably good at 0.81. Now, that is almost double Son's at 0.44. I wouldn't say Son's is terrible. I'd say it's average. It's definitely not a £10.3 million midfielder. I wouldn't want to pay more than sort of 6-7 million for someone with those stats. But we know that Son is an exceptional finisher. Sometimes the stats don't paint a full picture. And they are playing a new system now with a new manager and with really great fixtures. So you need to take into account the whole context and consider that these stats aren't the be-all and end-all. Great fixtures coming up. New manager. They could do very well. But Jota's stats, 0.81 is one of the best in the league, and they always are, and it's a very, very consistent thing with Jota. And when you know that you've got to nail Jota, it's a completely different ballpark to taking that risk on him and risking that rotation with Mane, Firmino and Salah. So that is a big difference. And then it continues to be quite a big difference in big chances. Jota's getting almost a big chance per 90 minutes. Son is getting a big chance, 0.62 big chances per game. Again, that 0.62 big chances, that's actually pretty decent for Son. That's better than a lot of players in the game. But once again, Jota's is just that good. And then touches in the box. I don't think either of these are that great, especially considering the fact that Jota plays in that false 9 position. But he does drop a little bit deep, drop out left, drop out right. And 5.53 is not anything to turn your nose up at. But when you think Salah gets almost 10 touches in the box, I think at the moment it's around 9.5 touches in the box per 90. You'd expect a little bit more from Jota. And Son's is pretty bad, really, at 4.32. Although, as I said, he's been playing on the left wing, and now he's going to be playing up top as part of a front 2, or even as a left forward as part of a 3-4-3. So I expect both of them to start getting more touch in the box. I expect both of them to do really well. And to be honest, you might put in the comments down below, just get both of them, and I would love to. But this is for those of us that can't get both. Who do you go for? For those of us that have got like a Havertz and we want to downgrade, or we've got a Foden and we want to... I personally, looking at this, and my frame of mind isn't perfect at the moment, but I'm thinking that Jota might be the one. For price, for the fact of how good Liverpool are, for the fact that he could be a long-term hold, because he'll probably play the next 6-7 games because of Firmino's injury. Even when Firmino's back, he still plays a lot. And then you've got AFCON coming up in early 2022. And when AFCON's on, Salah and Mane probably won't go, unless there's a change in... Because apparently Liverpool might not want to let them go. Anything can happen. But if they do go... Jota could be basically nailed until like March time, which you don't want to look that far ahead, but I just think he's more nailed than perhaps we're considering, even without the Firmino injury. So for the time being, I am leaning towards Jota, but I also like the idea of just taking a punt on Son. I think these stats and the fact that Spurs don't look great might put a few people off of Son, and I like that because sometimes you just hope that the fixtures breed for him, and I still think that Son will go absolutely crazy over the next 4 game weeks. So let me know down below in the comments. Son or Jota, what do you think? Are you going to go for both? Are you going to go for one? I'd love to hear what you think. For the time being, I'm leaning towards Jota, but I think Son is also a fantastic option. So we're sticking with midfielders for the next comparison, or the next 2 players on the watch list. And I want to make it clear, just because I'm doing the versus battle stats, all 6 players, and we were discussing 6 players in today's video, all 6 I recommend as being good options. I just like to compare because we're probably not going to bring in both Smith Rowe and Gallagher. Not, but we're probably be able to bring in both Son and Jota. So I like to just compare them and just show you how a similarly priced asset is doing. So I think both of these are great options for different reasons, right? And Emil Smith Rowe is he's like last year's Jesse Lingard, and I'm starting to look like a fool in every video. I keep telling people don't go for Smith Rowe because, as we're going to discuss, the stats don't look good. Don't go, and he keeps proving me wrong. So I'm going to be very careful in my suggestions here. Let's start with the fixtures for Smith Rowe versus Conor Gallagher. Fixtures-wise, the fixtures aren't great for Arsenal coming up. They're ranked about 17th, 18th for fixtures on the Fantasy Football fixture ticker, so they're not great fixtures coming up, and that's probably the only reason they're even that high is probably because of Newcastle and Southampton fixtures. But if you look at them irrespective of the colour scheme, and ignore the FDR colour scheme, Liverpool's not a great fixture at all. Newcastle is. United, anything can happen, really. Everton's not they've really defended poorly recently. Southampton is a good fixture, and then West Ham have been very defensively solid there. So I'm not saying they're good fixtures, but they're not horrific. It wouldn't put me off bringing in an Arsenal player because of Arsenal's fixtures. So don't let that put you off of Smith Rowe. And I just think he's a great long-term hold as well because he's nailed in that team and he's performing very well. So, and he's cheap, so I wouldn't mind holding him. Conor Gallagher's fixtures are definitely better though. Burnley, Villa, Leeds are 3 really, really nice fixtures. Villa, they will have a new manager bounce now, of course, but I'm not convinced that they're just going to suddenly be a great defensive team. Burnley, I think Burnley have been a little bit unlucky early on this season, but once again, that is a nice fixture to target, and Leeds have just been an absolute mess at the back. United, Everton, and Southampton after that isn't even that bad after. So I think fixtures-wise, there is a clear winner, and it is Conor Gallagher. Stats-wise, it starts to paint a picture of who I would personally recommend. But again, I'm going to be very careful with this because I keep getting proven wrong. Minutes-wise, they've both played a lot. Projected points, very, very similar. They're not obviously as high as the likes of Jota and Son, but they're both projected to do decently well over the coming weeks, around 3-4 points per game week, which is not great, not bad. Expected FPL points, Conor Gallagher clearly comes out on top, 5.86. That's a mixture of Crystal Palace having really good underlying defensive data because obviously he gets, for every expected clean sheet point, he gets an expected point as well. And also, he's just got really good stats as well. And Smith Rowe's 4.29 isn't terrible, but that's not great for me. I would be looking at 5 and above as being really good for expected FPL points. Non-penalty expected goals and expected assists, almost double for Conor Gallagher over Smith Rowe. So it's a very similar thing between Son and Jota in that Smith Rowe is almost half the underlying stats of Conor Gallagher. 0.56 for Gallagher is very, very good. It's not like mind-blowing, but considering he plays that number 8 role rather than playing as like a right winger or a striker, 0.56 is very, very, very impressive. 0.29 is pretty terrible, I will be honest. And this is what I keep saying about Smith Rowe. His expected goal involvement per 90 is very poor. 0.29 is it's not even nothing to write home about. It's just not great at all. It's around, I think it was 0.18 expected goals and 0.11 expected assists. So I'm not impressed by that by any means. And that suggests to me a couple of things. It could be luck that he keeps on scoring goals. It could be that he's a fantastic finisher, and I do think so because when I watch the games, he takes his chances well. Normally, these sorts of stats with the sort of performance we're getting from him would suggest that it's unsustainable. And by that, we mean he probably won't continue to score at the rate that he is, and that it might not be sustainable to keep scoring. But I'm saying might and may because he keeps proving me wrong. And I've been saying for weeks now, his underlying stats aren't good. Saka's underlying stats are so much better than Smith Rowe's. And this is one of the drawbacks of underlying stats is that sometimes they can take a while to catch up, or sometimes players can outperform quite easily for extended periods, their underlying stats. So, yeah. Expected goal involvement, much better for Gallagher. Big chances, much better for Gallagher. Again, 0.51 big chances means that Gallagher's getting a big chance every 2 games. 0.2 big chances per 90 for Smith Rowe means he's getting a big chance every 5 games. So obviously you want the player that's getting a big chance every 2 games rather than the player that's getting a big chance every 5 games. Touches in the box is really poor for both. 3.39 for Conor Gallagher, 2.93 for Smith Rowe. Yes, Gallagher's is better, but I'm not particularly impressed by either. It means that they're not getting into those clear-cut goal-scoring opportunities that much inside the box. And you can see that with the big chances. Even Gallagher's big chances isn't like mind-blowing by any means. It's a tough one. For me, the fixtures and the stats suggest Gallagher, but the current performance rate from Smith Rowe, you can't ignore that. And Smith Rowe is playing in a very, very good attacking Arsenal side at the moment. They're defensively, they've been a little bit weak at points, but they are still attacking relatively well. But Crystal Palace have been mightily impressive as well. That's why I've got Conor Gallagher. And as you're going to see in the next section, I've got another Crystal Palace player because we need to not consider historic data too much. And Crystal Palace just look good this season. They really do. So for me, I would suggest Conor Gallagher. But I would not be surprised if Smith Rowe continues to prove me wrong, like Lingard did last year, and continues to perform well. Let me know down below. Team Smith Rowe, or you Team Gallagher, or are you potentially going to get both in to then use funds elsewhere? It really is dire at the moment, isn't it? Trying to choose some strikers that might actually score some FPL points. It's really a mess. The strikers in this game need to get their act together. And it's really difficult trying to suggest who to bring in because you can bring in Kane. He's obviously so expensive. But you can bring in Kane for the fixtures. You can try and stick with Vardy because the fixtures don't look that bad coming up. You can stick with Antonio, who hasn't looked as great in recent weeks, but the fixtures are terrible, but his underlying stats are okay. You could go really cheap all the way down to like a Broja, an Armstrong, a Pookie, but Broja and Armstrong aren't nailed, and Pookie and Norwich are just not putting up the stats that would make me even tempted to go for them. So it's really difficult, but I have got my eye on 2 strikers. I'm not looking to change my strikers at the moment, but if I was, I'd be looking at these 2. Different prices, of course. Callum Wilson is £1 million more than Christian Benteke, but I just think that they're both showing a mixture of stuff that would make me think that they could potentially be decent options over the next 6. So fixtures-wise, as we always start with, I think I do just about prefer Callum Wilson's to Christian Benteke's, but it's pretty close. I think the reason I like Wilson so much is because of the Norwich and Burnley fixture in 14 and 15. And Brentford, as I said at the moment, they just don't look that great. And Eddie Howe's obviously now come in, and he obviously got a tune out of Callum Wilson and Fraser at Bournemouth. And I just think there might be a bit of chemistry between them, and he might get the best out of Callum Wilson and Newcastle early on. That sort of new manager bounce that doesn't always happen. And there are a lot of new managers in the Premier League. Someone tweeted, what happens when every team has a new manager? Do they all start bouncing? And it's true. You can't rely on that. But I just fancy Newcastle and Wilson over the next 4. But Benteke's fixtures, Burnley, Villa, Leeds, aren't terrible as well. Villa and Leeds aren't great fixtures at the moment. They're both green fixtures. And like I said, Villa might have a new manager bounce as well, and Leeds might start getting their act together. But I just think both Palace and Newcastle have pretty decent fixtures, as we discussed in the Gallagher section, and as we've discussed here for Callum Wilson. I really like this. I really like the fixtures for both. Stats-wise, there's a very, very clear winner. Remember, the box is white if they're second here, and the box is orange if they are the winner of the 2 stats. And Christian Benteke comes out on every single underlying statistic on top in comparison to Callum Wilson. So it's difficult because I see Christian Benteke as this monster, this physical man that can score some incredible goals. And I see him as a proper number 9. But for some reason, I just don't ever see him as an FPL asset. I don't know if it's because there's not as much excitement and flair to Christian Benteke, and he's a warrior, and he'll get in the right positions, but it's not an exciting pick. Reminds me a bit of Chris Wood. Chris Wood always puts up decent underlying stats, but I just never consider him for some reason. Maybe just not the most glamorous strikers, we could say, but I'm starting to consider him now. And sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and say, past historic data or past historic performances from players aren't always indicative of what they're going to do in the future. Total minutes-wise, Christian Benteke's essentially played an extra game's worth of minutes, but they've both played enough to take a decent look at their underlying stats. Projected points are very, very close between the two. Higher than Gallagher and Smith-Rowe for both of them, but not quite as high as the likes of Son and Jota. And that's sort of what you would expect based on the prices of them. You'd expect Smith-Rowe and Gallagher to be the lowest performing and then slowly go up to the likes of Son and Jota. 4.41 expected FPL points for Callum Wilson, 4.76 for Benteke. It's worth noting that strikers don't get the extra expected FPL point for goals and the expected FPL point for clean sheets. So strikers tend to have lower expected FPL points than midfielders. So around 4.5 or above is pretty good for a striker. So I'd say these are both decent. Neither of them blow me away. Non-penalty expected goals and expected assists is actually quite poor for Wilson. And 0.37 of that is expected goals. But the thing is with Wilson, no matter whether he's playing at Bournemouth or Newcastle, no matter where he plays, what manager he's got, how the team is performing, he puts up pretty decent underlying stats. He tends to hover between 0.4 and 0.5 expected goals, and he doesn't tend to drop much lower than that. Even now, when Newcastle aren't performing very well and he doesn't get many touches in a game, he's still putting up okay expected goals, and he doesn't tend to have much creativity. Benteke's 0.54 is pretty decent. That's an expected FPL return every other game, which is more than you would expect from a £6.3 million striker. So I'd be relatively happy with that. But we've seen with Benteke, he goes through these hot runs of form and then he'll drop off and then he'll get dropped. And I think Edouard would be, when everyone's fit, I think Edouard can play up top in place of Christian Benteke. At the moment, it looks like he wants to play them all together, but I don't know how long that will last. So I think Benteke is obviously nailed for the time being. I just don't know how now long term, whereas Wilson is. And when he's not nailed and when he's struggling for form, I do expect these stats to drop slightly. Big chances, very, very close and very, very good. 0.76 big chances per 90 for Wilson, 0.8 big chances per 90 for Benteke. I'd be happy with both of those. If they could maintain that all season, that'd be very, very impressive. Then you're looking at sort of 30, 35 big chances per season, which is outstanding, really, for these cheap strikers. And touches in the box, both decent, but again, not mind-blowing, but you wouldn't expect them to be mind-blowing at their price. 5.3 is really nice for Benteke. 4.72 is okay for Callum Wilson. Listen, they're both performing okay. Their teams are performing okay. Palace slightly better than Newcastle. I wouldn't be expecting miracles from anyone at this sort of price bracket in these teams. Like when you bring in the Armstrong or the Tonys, we want them to do really well, but you can't expect lots of FPL returns from players at these prices. For me, I would go for Wilson, and that's not backed by anything other than gut feeling and my faith in Wilson as a striker and looking at historic data and knowing how well he can continue to perform, knowing he's on penalties, knowing that Eddie Howe might get a tune out of this team. I think I would just do it. But the stats and the fixtures in general, longer term, and looking now at the stats, I think they lean towards Benteke, especially when you take into account that he's £1 million cheaper. So I suppose it largely depends on your structure. If you've got all the money in the world and you want to go from like an Antonio, my personal opinion, and take it only as an opinion, is I would go for Callum Wilson. But if you're looking for a cheaper striker, or you just want to trust the stats, Benteke looks like the guy. Let me know down below. Are you considering either of them, or are you just sticking with your current strikers because the striker pool at the moment is absolutely horrible? I've got Armstrong, Tony, and Kane, and I'm not going to move off on any of them for the time being. I'm just going to hope that they continue to get something for me in the coming weeks. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 12 watch list. Of course, there are more players on it, but I always select a few because I can't discuss everyone. And I'm really sorry that these videos are a little bit shorter and that I'm not able to respond to all the comments. Like I said, I appreciate the support so much, and I know already that you guys will be really supportive of me. And I love what we are building here on YouTube, and I can't wait to see it grow over the coming weeks, months, and years. And I just want to thank you so much for the support today, and I want to thank you for sticking with me during this tougher period in my life. And listen, we're all human, and we'll go through these points, but we will bounce back. If you're going through some tough times as well, know that there are people like me going through tough times, but we'll bounce back. Life is life, and you continue to live no matter what happens. So thank you so much for the support. If you want to support me further than just watching the videos, you know you can always like and comment. And if you're new to the channel, I'm normally a little bit happier than I am at the moment. And I'd appreciate if you stick around for future content. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, that helps me massively as well. And finally, if you want to support the channel further, you can download OneFootball, which is absolutely free to do. The link is in the description. And if you want to go above and beyond, you can become a member of the channel. That does require a small amount of money each month, so don't feel like you need to do that. If you want to do so, you can click the join button next to the subscribe button, or you can click the link in the description. Completely up to you. I just appreciate you being here and watching. So until next time, guys, which will probably be next week, I'm going to take the weekend off to gather my thoughts and stuff. So I'll see you next week, probably for some sort of team selection and game week preview video. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.